Well, I'm finally on vacation, so it's an opportunity for me to do some of these videos I've been promising, and I appreciate y'all's patience in waiting on them. I've been putting together a box to go over the differences between different types of LEDs, like why white balance matters, difference between an SMD and a Cobb LED, for example, things like that. In that box, I realized I had an opportunity to explain how I put these tabs, these locking tabs, into my boxes, because they're super easy on straight lines and they're easy on round lines. But most of our boxes are not perfectly straight or perfectly round. So I want to give some examples on that. Okay, so here's the example box that I'm working with. It's just to show off the differences between like SMD versus Cobb and why white balance matters and things like that. When I was putting this together, though, I intentionally changed some of the corners around. When you go to make these locking tabs, they're super easy on a straight edge, a straight line. So we'll start with one of those down here. They're pretty easy to do on perfectly round surfaces too, like what we have up here. But when you look at most of our light boxes, they're not straight or round, and you end up with a lot of odd shapes, a lot of control splines, things like that. So I turned these two corners into those as well. Let's go ahead and do some of these real quick. My walls are attached to my base, so I'm going to turn my base off because what I want to see is that inner lip. And I'm just going to go ahead and select my flat surface, create sketch. And I selected that surface so that now it actually has the geometry of that surface for me, which makes this part easier. I'm going to make a line, and I'm going to hit X to make it a construction line. And I'm going to find the center by looking for that little triangle. Come up 1 millimeter. I'm going to zoom in. Then I'm going to create a center rectangle. Hit X to turn off my construction line. And this is going to be 20 by 2. 20 is arbitrary. I just like it. You can use whatever dimension works for you or whatever dimension fits into your box. But I would suggest trying to keep the height too. Keep that. You're going to want to keep that. With that box created, that's all I need. I'm going to extrude that 1 millimeter and attach that to the lip of my face. And I know I usually work with multiples of line widths, but it's easier when you're doing the changes later to just simply use one. From there, I need to turn my sketch back on, turn my base back on, turn my face off, and flip around to the inside. I'm going to do the exact same thing, extrude one, cut a hole in it. What I've done at this point, if I turn on my analysis view and look at it from the side, I now have this feature that's going to want to lock together. And that's cool, but that would never work if you were to try and do this, like by hand actually assembling it, because you would snap and break things. There's no way for that to click together. So we need to add a few adjustments to the geometry to make that work. What I want to do, I'm going to turn my face back off and my analysis off. On my face, I have that one surface here. So I'm going to chamfer that by 1. That's going to give me this really neat little pyramid looking shape where I have the sides brought in just a tiny bit, and it slopes the top and bottom of it exactly 45 degrees, which means it'll print well and it will fit into our base. For the base, I need to do an additional chamfer on here. I'm going to grab that top line. Now I have select through turn on. It's just one of the things I work with. It lets me see all the dotted lines, all the hidden geometry. If that becomes too much in your drawings, if you don't like working with that, that's fine. You can turn that section analysis back on, and you can come in and select it from below. But either way, I need to chamfer that off by 1. And I need to do one more thing on our face. I need to grab that point of that pyramid, fillet that down. I've always used 0.4. It works fine. Now, if I compare that, if I look at that in our section view, that brings the point in a little bit, which will make it small enough to fit around here when you go to snap it all together. And it, so all your force is going to be from the face pointing up against this line. You've got enough of a surface there to actually hold it together. It is a little bit thin right here, like from this line to this line out here. It's not very thick. But that's only for a little bit of the box, so it's okay, because you'll still get strength from the rest of the areas of your walls. So that is our straight edge. Pretty easy. let's come over here and look at this one. We'll do one on this rounded side now. Same process as before. I'm going to turn my base off. I'm going to find where my lip is. And I want to put a sketch here, but if I try and put a sketch here, it doesn't, because sketches are flat. They have to be put on flat surfaces. So what I'm going to do is make a tangent plane construction plane. Click on that guy, and that's it. That's going to go ahead and average the difference, or find the middle between the two edges of my bend. So this should be a 45-degree construction plane. And I'm going to create a sketch against it. Now from here, I want to be able to find the middle of this line. So I'm going to hit P for projection, hit X to make it a construction line, and select that line. I now have a straight line. Well, a straight line, I can find the middle of it. There's my middle. Come up by 1. And then make my center rectangle. Hit X to, almost forgot. The rounded ones, we're going to do something a little bit different. 1.01, not 1. It'll make sense in a minute. For my center rectangle, same thing as before, 20 by 2. And the reason why I brought that up just a tiny, tiny bit, when I go to do my extrusions, I'm going to choose from object and then click on my rounded surface, till it 1. Now that I have this shape, and there's just the tiniest little gap between the bottom of this and the bottom of my, the invisible bottom of my face, it's going to make the chamfer easier, because Fusion gets really finicky when you're working with teeny tiny numbers on rounded surfaces like this. Because if I tell this to chamfer off right now, it's not going to do it. But I can do 0.9999. That will work. And this is such a small difference, your slicer will not be able to tell the difference of it. When I go in to do my fillet, I'm going to select one line, and you can zoom way, way, way in, hold shift and find that other line, get both of them, 0.4. So I now have a rounded tab that has the same geometry as the flat one, and it's close enough that the slicer won't be able to see the difference. I need to do this same thing on my base. Same thing as I did before. So turn my base on, my face off, my sketch back on. I'm going to grab that line, hit E for extrude, from object, click my face, 1. That gives me the same style little insert as before, little feature. I grab my chamfer tool. Same as before, if I do 1, not going to work, but 0.999 will. So I'm not going to go to try and draw a analysis in on here, but you can kind of see it with the hidden lines. I have that same locking tab here as I have on the front. Now, it's a little bit trickier when you start looking at a not perfectly round surface. And again, this is what you're probably going to see the most of in your boxes. Turn my base back off. If I were to try and create a tangent line here, it's not going to work because it's not perfectly round. I can't select anything, not the way I could like when I was over here looking at this one. Well, tangent only works on round things, and well, this isn't round. So we're going to do a construction between two edges. I'm going to find on my geometry a large enough segment where I can grab those two edges and make my construction plane. Now you can come through here and, oh, not this one, sorry. I need to create sketch. And now we're gonna have to be a little bit more careful because our sketch based on our construction plane was, well, look at that, we're cutting through it. That's gonna make it more difficult. There's a way you can fix that. Instead of doing a sketch on a construction plane there, let me undo that sketch. I can make another construction plane. Do an offset plane, which is the default, bring that out so it's not actually on that surface. So, I mean, you can drag it a little ways out, doesn't really matter. This is going to be easier, maybe. I'm just showing this because maybe this works in some of your boxes. And then I'll go ahead and do my sketch on this one instead. And we'll turn off that. Process is same as before. I'm going to do a projection of that rounded edge. find my middle point, come up by 1, grab a center rectangle, 20 by 2, and I did it again. I didn't put in my 0.01. There we go. Extrude, object, 1. Same thing as before. Have a nice, same rounded little tab. That's there. Now, where this becomes more difficult, though, because that sketch is hanging out all the way over here, if I switch over to my base, it's inside the base. That can be frustrating. So you actually have to turn your base off, select it, extrude it, turn your base back on, find your object, and go by 1. You can do this the same without doing the offset plane. It's just maybe easier this way. It's the same difference in the end of the day. All right, turn that off. I need to do the chamfer on the inside here. 1 will not work, but 0.999 will. Oh, it doesn't on this one. Because it's not a consistent radius, you're going to have to try and find some sort of middle ground here. 975 usually works. I don't know if I can get any more in from there. 985. Okay, we're getting closer. 999. 995. 998. 998. All right, as close as we can get it to being 1. 998 is plenty enough. Go back to our face. The reason why I brought that offset up, or why I brought that middle line up by that extra 0.1, same thing with the rounded one. If this surface and this surface are the same, trying to do a chamfer on this becomes even more difficult. Whereas 998 works in this case. If I were to try and do 999, it doesn't. If it were part of the same surface, you have to do like 975 or something. So I like just doing it this way. Bring it up just that tiny, tiny bit. Again, it's not enough that the slicer can really tell the difference. We'll see that in a moment. I'm going to zoom way in so I can see both of those two lines. And we'll grab our fillet tool, U and U, 0.4. Zoom out. And that's that. I now have 3 different tabs. I've got a flat one over here. That one was easy to put together, right? I've got one over on this side, the perfectly round one. Not too bad. Basically the same process over here on any of our spline lines, but it's the same thing. So let me go ahead and just export this guy real quick. Yep. And I'll turn my base on. We'll export the base. Yep. Making sure I actually have everything on the base. And we'll export the base. And I'm going to need a second copy of Studio Open. So for this, if I look at my face, the new feature they added to Studio 1.10, you get on step files this import option. I usually do 0.003 for my linear deflection. I leave angle deflection the same. This gives me nice round edges. Still lets me get a lot of G2, G3 commands out of it, which is pretty neat. Same normal stuff that I do on all my boxes. Set the colors as they need to be, just by doing color by object. Knock that out real quick so this actually looks okay. All right, so we got our colors on there. I'm not using my profile. There we go. I was tell by the size of the thing there, prime tower. And we'll flip this over onto its face. When I go to slice this, I'll switch over to line view in a moment, once it finishes rendering this out. While we wait, we'll go ahead and drag in base to the other one. Okay, so line type. You can see those little tabs have been rendered in. And like I was saying, the difference in height is so small that the slicer can't tell the difference. It just draws the lines as it normally would. Got our spline line, we've got our round line over here. Where it just adds that little tab in. And of course our flat one all the way over here. The flat ones work best. If you have features in your box where you can add flat ones, I would recommend adding the flat ones in. And for the faces, you don't have to do anything special for them at all. They're fine just as they are. When I go to look at our base, however, and I'm not going to bother changing all of this around to the proper ones. I'm just going to give them color so we can tell the difference. And put this on my base profile. I come in here and look with line type. See our rounded one over here. It's going to give us 2 walls and a tiny bit of gap infill, which is fine, nice and strong. And there's that little locking feature getting drawn in. On the spline side, it should look exactly the same. We have that, which if I come in here to look at quality and where is my top surface area? Here we go. 200 maybe? There we go. 150 might work, but changing the top area threshold has turned this right here. I'll go back and undo that. That top area threshold tells it that this area is too small to be considered a top surface. So maybe 150 would be enough. Basically, it'll just stop it from doing little zigzags. No, 200. And it'll make this print with just a concentric wall. It'll make it print faster and a tiny bit cleaner. Turn line type back on. Yeah, it'll zip along, do that, and then add that feature in. Nice. And then on this side, oops, we have our font. Cool. So those are all in place. They're all where they belong. They all look good. I am getting a warning, and I don't know why, about the lip having some broken geometry in it. So we'll go ahead and let it fix that. I had the same warning on the face, but I think it's just a little triangle on the inside of it. It really doesn't matter, to be honest. So yeah, that still draws perfectly normal. And if I look over here, I think it's the black object, which includes my lip. Tell it to fix that. Shouldn't make any difference. It's probably freaking out about the inside of one of these tabs on the spline and rounded one not perfectly meshing, but we'll double check and make sure there's no anomalies. So the flat one looks good to me. Come over and look at this one's our splined. What do we got here? Looks perfectly normal to me. No complaints there. And on our round one, what do we have here? Honestly, it could also be from the font that I was using. Nothing special there. Okay. So let's go back over to Fusion. Yeah, when I go to assemble this, it'll be nice and easy. Those little tabs will snap in real easy and hold this thing together so the face won't fall off the base. So I'll get that printed and we'll show some examples of what that looks like.
All right, so we have our final box. I haven't put anything in it yet, but it's holding together. And come in here and pull it apart. See, that's our, focus, there we go. That's our spline corner. And we decided to put our Z-seam in there so that makes it kind of visible. That's our rounded corner. Then on the bottom, we've got our flat one. I hope that's focused, can't tell. Looking at the face, focus for me, there we go. Got our tab on the flat end right there. There's our round one, that's our round one right here. And then our spine curve. Let's see, I'll get real close here and try and get it focused. So yeah, popping this in is nice and easy. I just line up my two round ones and then snap down on the flat edge, and that will not come off. That's on there. No adhesive, no screws, no nothing.